Hello, and welcome to our second arc of Fearful Symmetries, which is a Trail of Cthulhu setting set in the 1930s England. It is a little bit of folk horror. It is a cult. We've done an entire series of this already, so I won't belabor the point because honestly, if you're interested in this and listening to that, you really want to go back and watch the start on through as a coherent series of events, which I think holds together. There is a playlist for this in the podcast form, and I think that there's also a playlist for things within the YouTube channel itself. I want to talk about a few things. First, let's talk. This is part of Open Hearth Gaming, which is an online gaming community slash group. You can find out more about that at openhearthgaming.com. We're here on YouTube. We also have a Discord. We have a Patreon, all of those kinds of things. Uh, all of the games that are run in our community use a layered set of safety tools. And so to remind our players, we are using lines, veils, and ask first as our baseline. And right now we have lines on the following things, which are tortured by the PCs, sexual assault, misogyny, transphobia, and racism. Those are hardline things that are topics, themes we're not going to be dealing with in play. And then we have a veil on sex, essentially a very British fade to black or looking away on that. So those things are in there. This is a living document, so it may change, especially if we hit things that we suddenly realize are topics that we need to put as a line and veil. However, this has been developed over about 10 sessions, so I think we're probably in pretty good shape, pretty good agreement as players. We have a completely returning cast, and that is appreciated. The second layer of our safety tools is, of course, the X card, which we use either verbally or through a gesture to mark out material that we find objectionable, that we find problematic. There are a variety of reasons for doing that. Uh, uh, One of the things is that that can be pointing to where we've maybe started to lean towards something that's a line and haven't really spotted it. We can stop there, do the X card to find that. The X card is also used to recalibrate if maybe we've kind of gone off topic or we've gone in a particular direction that feels off tone. That's a way to do that. And then lastly, the open door policy, which basically means that should you feel like you need to step away for whatever reason, you should feel free to step away if that's, for the immediate moment or for longer down the road. You don't have to explain yourself. If you're going to leave and not come back, it might be good to tell us, but you're also not obligated to do that. Just want to know that you have the freedom to make those choices. Of course, I am speaking to a virtual audience rather than the people who have played 10 sessions or more in this game. So we just recognize that. Now, we are coming back with our characters after a period of time. I was slightly off in my timeline. We were in 1933 last time. We are in 1934 now as we are coming in. A year has passed between those times. And as we talked about a little bit off camera, some things have occurred, some things have changed. Our characters have had some significant developments, which we're going to kind of come back to. But on the meta, what I want to say is right now, as you're looking at your characters, you can move around, swap wherever you want. Let's say 3 investigative points. Like if you want to take a new skill, take a point away from somewhere, take a new skill, swap those around. I think 3 feels like a fair number for doing that. If anyone wants more than that, that there's something they feel that they would really like to make that shift on, you can do that. And then you may also swap around at your discretion up to 10 points of general ability points. That's a little more substantial because that can represent, training, exercise, change in diet, all of those kinds of things. Everyone should make sure to reset your stability, sanity, those things back up to their baseline default. If you have build points recorded on your sheet, as I know some of you do, you are still welcome to spend those now or later as you see fit. So let me give everybody a few moments to take a look at their characters. I will mention just so, because it would be a sort of logistical thing. In the case of these moving around points, we're not worrying about the skills that are marked as key skills or anything like that. We're assuming points as set, and then it gets swapped around when they get swapped around.
Can I just check what you said about stability, Lowell?
So you should reset your stability back up to what you have set as your baseline.
Okay.
Yeah. My argument for that is certainly that we read stability as the key clock for this arc, but you will have returned to a baseline state. And if you wish to lower your stability to put those points elsewhere, you can do that. I would welcome you to do that, Dr. Whitewood.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. I was thinking that very thing. Yeah, where is my fleeing?
You're a bit faint, Alan, just so you know.
Oh, right. Let me see if that's to do with... Oh, yeah. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Better?
Good.
Okay.
One of the things I do want us to talk about today is after I'm going to have everybody kind of check in on various abilities and skills, and then we're going to talk about introductions. You may keep or reset your points for contacts. You're welcome to keep those as established or not. It is entirely up to you. I believe the only person who had a significant hit to a source of stability is Dr. Whitewood. And maybe when we talk introductions, we'll talk about what the implications are of that. Now, let me talk meta about this, how I want to frame this up in terms of where we're going to be here. And when we do introductions, you can talk a little bit about where you imagine your character is, but what I'm going to picture is when we come into play here, we're going to start with one of you, in particular, Richard Fraser. We are going to start with essentially a mission being given to Dr. Fraser or Mr. Fraser. And essentially the next steps are going to be even though you have kept in communication, probably depending on the level, you can decide how much that has been, but this will be the moment of Fraser being asked to get the band back together effectively. And then we'll do those kinds of go to the next person, get a little bit about what we see of them, and then move on to do that. So that's the general idea, if that sounds good with everyone. Other thing I want to mention, and this may not be a thing you decide today, probably won't be a thing you decide today, but everyone may take another spell. Or you can leave a blank spot and say, I want to think about what kind of spell I want. We have those books, so everyone is welcome to have picked up another one. For Richard, if you want to have that be a stage or two on your journey, you're also welcome to choose that instead of a new spell or kind of as a sideline to that. And no, Dr. Whitewood has not been recast.
There wasn't Ian McKellen before.
There was Ian McKellen before.
It was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Whitewood is rather different now.
Yeah.
It's been a rough year.
He just needs a donkey jacket and he could go outside the cenotaph so well.
Have you seen The Keep And the aging makeup for Ian McKellen in The Keep is actually really wild to see because he's so young at the early part of this movie, and then they do the age makeup, and it's not bad for what he ends up looking like when he gets older. Yeah.
Yeah, that's close. He's just
Yeah.
a bit skinnier in the face than he would
Uh-huh.
be in real life, isn't he? Yeah.
The Keep is a wild movie, soundtrack by Tangerine Dream, and also one of the few horror movies set in World War II that was made into a D&D module.
Mm.
There's a rabbit hole to investigate.
Oh yeah.
So here's a goofy question. I'm sure it's written down somewhere, but I'm not seeing it. For build points, is it 1-for-1 on general and some trick on investigative? Or is it
Yes, if I recall correctly, it is 1-for-1 on general. Let me look up.
I have the note on the keeper says spend 1-for-1 investigative, 1-for-1 on general.
Oh, okay.
okay? Cool.
I can never remember those.
Then I am all set and I can zero out my build points.
Okay.
I've invested a few more in firearms since it came in handy having a gun against the troll. I remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so did the blade, though, as well.
The blade definitely came in handy later on, but I'm squishier than say Wilfred Brumble. In
So,
fact, Miss
yeah.
Grimaldi, the squishiest among us.
So let me come to this. I'm going to walk through. I want to do this, and we'll do this in character keeper order as we usually do. We'll start far left to right. I would like, Richard, first you give us the name, pronouns, the pitch for the character as it existed, maybe what changes you've made in terms of build points, and then maybe a general sense of what you imagine has gone on in this last year. So let me start with you, Richard.
So, Richard Fraser is in his late 20s. He just missed the war. His family didn't. One of his sources of stability is his brother Michael, who is a much more, taciturn and by the book sort of fellow. But Richard is a legal clerk who had supplemented his income quite heavily with a breakout novel, The English Thorn. It was a legal society drama that had a coded message that inspired a sort of cult following among, some of the members of the upper crust. And that's what sort of drew him into, these sort of realms of Gnosticism. And yeah, that was going fairly well for him, but obviously uncovering the true meaning of Britain, of Albion, falling under Christina Weiberg, it's opened his eyes to greater truths and greater secrets, and his knowledge of Enochian has stood him in handy as he's spent much of his time exploring the 38 Aethers, astral projecting, and sometimes it seems physically projecting into realms beyond our own. And his bargain with
With Wayland Smith?
Yeah, the sort of the Loci spirit, Wayland Smith, was his next great work, which he had a rough title of the Empire's Thorn, and that was set to be his great masterpiece. Everyone was expecting so much of Richard Fraser's next great work. He'd been given a substantial advance for that. And I think that Richard's not really been living up to his end of the deal as far as his publisher goes, or as far as his employer at the law firm goes, who already had him on a fairly loose leash. But he's been late on his work. The bills have been piling up. The notes from his publisher coming through a letterbox into a door, into a room that is marked with sigils and candles and an empty space where a man should be sat. And I think over this time, he's certainly explored his way through the ethers. He's learned so much from his guide in these strange realms, a small cat named Uther, who he's not sure, is a figment of his own spirit or something deeper within, but seems certainly knowledgeable. and he's only barely managed to keep his material responsibilities fulfilled through much great suffering, and he has lost all the good faith that he formerly has. He managed to get through a finished draft of the Empire's Thorn, but no matter how much effort he put into it, it always seemed drab and uninspiring, and just so much lesser than the planes that he was walking. So he barely upheld his end of the contract. An advance for his third book is not forthcoming, and so I have lowered Richard's credit rating to a 2 from a 3.
Okay.
I don't know where I'm going to put that point now. I just chucked it back into build points for now to see where I might put it. He has greater work in store, much greater works than mere literary, and the sooner he can be done with these material ties and the nonsense, the endless drudgery of the legal profession, the better, frankly. It's only thanks to his brother coming around and threatening to box his ears that he showed up at work at all, and he always seems distracted.
Yeah, your brother at the end of the last game had a bit of an argument with you about this, and this has continued on. I think one of the things that is the most painful about the flaccid, pale manuscript that you submitted is that when you shut your eyes and you are falling off to sleep, there is a moment where passages from the real work will appear in your mind, just hang there for a moment, and by the time you've woken, they're gone.
Uthar tells me that in the library of Kadath, the Empire's Thorn sits upon a shelf, beloved and well read, and a masterpiece of the literary form, and yet it just never makes it to the page. Yeah.
Excellent. Any other big shifts that you've done in terms of points that you mentioned firearms?
Yes, he has in his brief moments back in his time spent in the waking world, he has been diligently polishing the revolver that came into his acquaintance, and I think perhaps he's had a, I think out of all the other investigators, he was most sort of actually deferential to Mr. Wilford Brumble, who he respected for his time in the war and his service, and all those qualities that he knows that his brother would value in a man like Wilford. And probably he's been asking, what little he's learned of firearms. He's only up to a 3. He's not exactly a hot shot in it, but he's gone from 0 to 3. It's probably been, Wilford showing him how not to blow his own ear off, stuff like that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. With that in mind, let us come to Dr. Arthur Whitewood. Dr. Whitewood, give us who you are, elevator pitch, and then we'll talk about kind of where you're at right now.
I am in my 60s. I'm being played by Ian McKellen, and I have been a successful society alienist in London, working among the wealthy, offering them analysis in the new fashion. But the bit of the work that I actually enjoyed was being called upon by Scotland Yard's Chief Inspector Jepson as a consultant when he ran into difficulties in terms of the motivation of criminals. And so yeah, I have a successful practice. I'm well respected, or at least I was, until about a year ago, after the events of our previous arc, newspaper articles appeared where I was connected with Satanism. And one after another, my society clients have very politely gone elsewhere. I had various connections to various asylums around the country, and those have become rather strained, at least, if not been withdrawn. And even my marriage is under some pressure, because I am married to Emmeline, Emmeline is the source of our money, really. Emmeline has inherited wealth, and so we continue to have a very nice house in London. But yes, that has become rather strained. And to reflect some of that, I've reduced my health by 1 and my stability by 3, because I think that this is all taking a bit of a toll on Dr. Whitewood. And I think probably when we first see him, it will be, wandering along the streets of London looking like this. He has aged more than a year in the last year.
One of the things I'd like to suggest, and tell me if this is okay, because I think I'd like to build on something that we had established last time, is your wife has put more of her attention into caring for this young woman,
Yes.
Annabelle Gray, who you rescued. And that's been part of it, is she has deeply invested in taking care of this young woman who still pines for her lost boyfriend, beloved, who is in the clutches of a Portmore, but who is a talented violinist, who helped you with that. And so your wife, to kind of make up for perhaps her attempting to find a space in her life, she has definitely leaned towards that. Does that seem fair?
Oh, absolutely. If you hadn't suggested, I would have.
Oh, good. What have you done in terms of, let me ask you this first. You had lost your pillar of sanity of your faith in a benign God.
Yes.
Do you think that is still absent, or have you found a new pillar of sanity that you want to replace that with?
I'm not sure I have.
Okay.
I think that it's difficult to go back to God after what I've seen and experienced. I still have faith in man, that mankind's innate goodness, and that is best exhibited through the discipline of science and the intellect.
Absolutely.
Albeit that my own grip on both of those has slipped rather.
What shifts did you make in terms of your abilities?
I moved when I opened the Keeper, I found myself with 4 build points. Now I don't know if those are leftovers of last time that I haven't spent, but I'm reducing those to 0. And what I've done is to shuffle points out of health and stability and scatter them around things that I think Arthur thinks will be more useful given the fearful symmetries that he has experienced. So there's an extra in let me see if I remember them all. There's one of those in athletics. I think maybe I put one into contacts because it seems to me that he may have moved in some different circles. I put one somewhere else. Preparedness. Again, there's a carpet bag under his bed with things that he considers important, just in case he has to go somewhere quickly. And he is just generally more suspicious of the world. So I've added 1 to sense, trouble, and stealth.
Okay.
I think that adds up to 5.
Yes, a little more in athletics. I remember the scenes of you clambering around the outside window of the school. All right, I think that gives us a good sense of where you are at. Let us come to Wilfred Brumble.
Hello. I'm Paul. I'm playing Wilfred Brumble. And the last time we saw Wilfred was the deal that Wilfred got was actually pretty good, really, compared to the other characters. I
You
lost
had
3.
less to lose.
Well, when you're at the bottom, there's not much you can lose. and Wilfred was dispatched off to Woodbridge in Suffolk, where he assisted a archaeological dig for 3 months. Well, it should have been 3 months and a day, but I managed to knock one day off that. You know, a day's always handy. And I think this has been reflected. So he spent some time outside of London. So I've reduced Wilfred's knowledge, or the knowledge, and clearly I was on an archaeological dig, so I've gained a point of archaeology with that, and I haven't really moved around much else. I've also sort of reset. I had the Hoxton gang in London at 2. I've now reduced that to 1. Sort of put 1 back into the pool for contacts, and I think that's reflected on the. Wilfred's done his 3 months in London. He then spent some time up and down the Suffolk coast, Dunwich, sort of go up to that direction, and then found himself in Ipswich, where he worked some time as a longshoreman on Ipswich docks. And then eventually, I'd probably say in the last 6 months, he returns to London to find his friends in a pretty poor state, more of a Wilfred state, and he looked up to these people. You know, these are people you want to be, and they seem to have taken a bit of a tumble down various ladders. And I think when he does go down to London, he brings Richard along. I don't want to say a hamper. Hamper's quite sort of posh, but whatever sort of vegetables he's managed to sort of pilfer from the docks in Ipswich and off the land, because Richard's he doesn't really look well. He's spending way too much time sort of locked in his room. Wilfred doesn't pity him. He just sees a friend that needs some help. And he also does the same for his World War One sort of medical supervisor, Dr. Arthur Whitewood. You know, he finds him wandering around the parks of London, a place that Wilfred knows quite well. And he sees that he's a bit down on his luck, so he tries to help out the good doctor whenever he can when he's down in London. And I don't know what's happened to Isabella, but a few times I'm in London, I always try and look in any of the shows, see if I can see her name on any of the posters to see what's
You will not see her name on any show posters.
So yeah, after wandering around, yeah, I can't find anything to do with Isabella, and I'm slightly concerned.
One of the things is that if and Richard and Arthur, you both are in London, right? Or I can't remember if you live in Oxford, Richard.
I think the offices of my legal firm are in London, and I work and live in a satellite office near Christina Weiberg in Oxford. But
Okay.
I'm one of sort of early commuter types, you know, like
Right.
back and forwards on the train. And my brother lives in London.
And I think that for you have probably gotten used to the pall and depression that falls on you when you ride into London each day. But I think Wilfred, having been away and gone back to the city again, that sense of the dampening of the draining that comes when you go to London is probably acute for you. It passes after a while because London is your home turf and you do like it, but you will definitely have that in the back of your mind. And if you want to see, there is a movie that details what Wilfred was doing with Carey Mulligan. That's very fun to watch. I can't remember the name of it right now, but is a great, and certainly I picture that very strongly with your work there. Isabella, let us come to you. You are muted.
Yeah, so I think she also sort of operates out of Oxford as much as possible. I mean, a good deal. Part of that is because she is concerned for Crispina, and wants her to get better.
And let me put a pause here on that, and I'll let
Yeah.
you continue. Crispina has been not confined, but she has spent the last year in a sanatorium, a recovery, like a very posh water treatment, very pleasant one, and has been recovering. She is still shaken. Her sanity is still delicate, but she has recovered, and she is there. We'll assume it's on the outskirts of Oxford, just to kind of so that we know where she is at.
All right. So I imagine that she actually stayed at Crispina's house, just because she hasn't been there to keep the house in shape, except that she has traveled. Essentially, she and Sebastian traveled to the continent. They spent a little bit of time in France, but mostly they went down to Italy. And she sort of, when she saw what the situation was in Italy, she has sort of everything that she's been doing since she's come back has been trying to scrabble together enough money to get tickets for her family to leave, is essentially it. So it is very much that sort of thing. Other than that, she plays tennis with Sebastian. She occasionally sees Richard. I think they stop and have tea occasionally. Isabella sort of pointedly doesn't talk about all the strangeness, if that makes any sense. So she does try to impress upon Richard how dire things are in Italy, and you say, but she almost doesn't have the words for it, if that makes any sense. She
It
tries.
doesn't. I think that Richard immediately, begins to talk about it in terms of yes, and in the realm of the bag, you can see where sins are made flesh, and immediately drags it back to all the weirdness.
Yes. So she sips tea and lets you work that through your system, and she, yeah, but she does make sure she visits with you. That thing you have that very much that sense of it's time for the every third week tea with Isabel. I think she is pretty high strung right now.
Have you moved around anything in terms of your ability points?
I took my athletics up for tennis, I think. I imagine that her skills, like with the chemistry and stuff, remain fine because she is essentially in conversation with Sebastian and those sorts of things. She has access to them. She probably gets occasional jobs to do stage pyrotechnics, not in London, if that makes any sense. So,
and probably
she,
not for magic shows.
no, definitely not for magic shows. It's other
Well,
extravaganzas. So,
okay, we'll return to that again. This is the height of Mussolini. This is the height of people in the West looking at Italy and saying, that's how you get things done. This is the height. This is where Mussolini has given Vatican its own status and has co-opted a great deal of the Catholic Church there. Mussolini has miraculously avoided several assassinations attempts, and he has ritualized. He has borrowed rituals from Roman history to try and bring back that glory. There is a museum dedicated to Mussolini, that is, requires people to go through a set of ritual spaces with choirs playing in the background and different lighting and heating, and it is all very sinister. There are echoes throughout what you've seen with the fascists and the black shirts there, that they are not using magic as you would conventionally see it, but they are definitely drawing on a folk tradition and perverting certain things to particular effects, and you're worried about where that goes. And certainly, Lord Portmore has spoken of his admiration, despite Mussolini being a foreigner, his admiration for El Duce. Isabella, what was the fallout with the sacrifice that you make when you revealed magician secrets behind,
Mostly it was very quiet. And that's how the actual magicians are. She just kind of cold cut out. She had warned her father. He has remained silent as well. His show is popular, but other magicians don't come to see it anymore, if that makes any sense.
absolutely. We're going to cut to Richard. Where do we see you, Richard, when we come in? Are you in your apartments working? Are you doing a ritual? Where are we going to see you at?
I think that we see Richard on the train back from London towards Oxford with a stack of papers that he's been given by his office, each of which have a post-due mark on the top. This should have been action months ago, and Richard keeps taking a dreary look at some of them and shuffling through the papers, and then even as he begins to go through them and underline certain points, you see his mind begins to wander. On a scrap of paper to the right, he begins to draw an Enochian, stare out the window and look up at the moon and think about what Uthar might be seeing from up there.
And we see you coming out into the Oxford station, last train in, late, coming in, and surprisingly empty station. We'll see you walking, and you will see a figure on a bench who stands up at your approach and will step into the light, this shadowy figure, and you will see Myra Dearman, the keeper of the Rollright stones. Mr. Fraser.
Mrs. Dearman, I didn't expect to see you here. It's rather odd to see you outside of the stones and among the cobbles and gas lamps of Oxford.
Needs must. I have come to collect a debt from you, Mr. Fraser.
Well, you wouldn't be the first, as he shuffles the papers back into his briefcase.
I think you know of what debt you owe me and the stones.
Yes. Yes, we did make a bargain.
Come, surprisingly, the little tea shop inside is still open. Let us go and sit.
Well, yes, they do a rather good Darjeeling.
And you'll go in, and it is weird. This place ought to be closed by now. But there's a young woman who seems maybe a little off, who will pour the tea for you. And Dearman will say, you a couple of weeks ago, one of the members of our coven, Felicity Hale, went to visit her cousin, St. John Hale. It's up in Warwickshire, which is also going to put a pin in that. Let me sidebar this. Once again, just to remind everybody, I am American, and I'm going to say so many things wrong. You're all welcome to giggle and so on, but I'm just not going to try an accent, and I'm gonna get so many terms wrong. To go back,
Warwickshire.
Warwickshire.
Yeah. But we're not consistent with it, so I wouldn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Her cousin, St. John Hale, had some strange goings on at his estate. I don't know the details of that. Felicity had said that he was her cousin was somewhat easily spooked, but knew that she had some experience with the unusual. Felicity went up with another coven member, a young Miss Farrow, and they went up early on a Monday. They came back early on the Wednesday following, and on their drive back from Upper Quinton, they had an automobile accident, and their car went off the road. Both were killed.
I'm dreadfully sorry, Miss Dearman.
Yes, yes. The inquest very quickly ruled death by misadventure, perhaps with some commentary about women driving cars, as I understand it. However, with the death of a member of my coven, 2 members, in fact, their ravens should have returned to the stones. They have not. This place in Upper Quinton, it's on the edge of that area, sort of between Upper and Lower Quinton. It is not that far from Meon Hill, several hours walk from there. So you'll know it. But it also means that that lies on the line. I want you to gather your fellows, and I wish you to go there and find out what has occurred.
With an occult spend, perhaps, would I be able to get a bit more detail on the significance of the ravens?
Yeah, I think that you would know with that spend that they are practicing witches there, the Rollright Coven.
Yeah.
And I think you'd seen the birds before. And this is essentially, they're not exactly a familiar, but they are bonded to that and associated with the stones. Like the ravens should come back to the stones. They come from the crows, the ravens that live near the stones. Each member of the coven would have one. It's if they weren't there, the raven would kind of come as a proxy to sit on the stone to show their absence, and so it's kind of important to them, and they should have returned, essentially in part to carry a bit of their soul, as it were, back to the stones. Does that seem like a fair answer?
Yeah, that seems like exactly a fair answer. Yeah, I mean, obviously that was all the stuff that I, the player, assumed, but could
Right.
be anything. Yeah. Richard will steeple his fingers and nod and say, "It is said that that a witch's that the ravens of Rollright bear some part of the souls of the coven. I can see why you would be anxious about their return. I'm afraid our group has lost its purpose with the return of Miss Weiberg. We yet wait for her leader to recover herself after striking down the dragon there in the darkness. The great work remains undone, but I have found my own work. But I will put it aside for now. For you're right, we do owe you a debt, and perhaps this is what we need."
Your Lady Crispina will never recover to be the leader that she was. I say that in all honesty, having met with her, and you and your others will have to step up into that. You have, as you say, slain one dragon, but there are others that remain in England and that look to take this land.
I'd love if there's a stack of the papers, and perhaps just in the corner of one there is a picture and a quote from Lord Portmore. Oh, Mussolini is a great man.
Yes.
We need more of that here, kind of thing. Spirit of the nation. Yeah. Well, we gave our word, Miss Damon, and you came through for us and for Albion. And so I will seek out my erstwhile companions and we will investigate. Upper Quentin, you say, is Mr. Hale? Would he be welcome a visit? It would be good for us to speak to him before investigating further.
He knows that his cousin was involved in strangeness. That's why he called her up there. I expect that if you appear and say that you were acquainted with her and perhaps had some suspicions about her death, he might be, with the proper inducements, willing to assist. He has his own secrets, but that is all I will say in polite company.
Indeed. Out of character.
Yeah.
I know, I dimly recall that there are different paths of magic, and we settled on, these Gnostic ritualists, sort of, as our group's kind of, the esoteric sort of D kind of magic, John D kind of magic.
Right.
The Rollright witches use the more sort of folklorish witchcraft.
It
right?
is literally called witchcraft in their particular approach to things. There's also alchemy, which is another path that comes on. There's that. Let's see, we've of course got our particular form. Let me look here. There are also essentially the trees of the Sephiroth, there's spiritualism, there are all of those kinds of things. And while there are some overlaps, witchcraft being, some of the magic that you've learned, some of the spells that you've picked up from the books have an echo in that kind of folkloric magic.
Are we able to use different schools of magic, or are we sort of locked to what we've picked us out? Because I was wondering, like, the possibility of saying, well, is there nothing that the Coven could give us? We are still but students in this, any witchcraft. I think Richard is eager to learn, eager for anything that might lap up, even though he's probably absorbed entirely in the idea that the higher planes are what direct, the material concerns.
Let's put a bracket on that.
Okay.
And say that she will say, I will provide a incantation, basic, that even one who is not fully initiated into our rites can use. And I'll get you to the details on that. Does that seem fair?
That seems more than fair. I am just a fair warning. I am going to be trying desperately throughout the entire thing to learn as much magic as possible.
Oh, absolutely. I look forward to you burning through your stability and sanity. So
exactly. Yeah, that's what it's going for. Yeah, but cool. I will I think as I flick open the paper and I go to read the Lord Portmore section, briefly, and as I pull it down, I imagine that Mrs. Dearman is gone. And there is just a cooling cup of tea with perhaps pretentious leaves in the bottom of it.
Yes. Let's take our first break here. Let's take 10 and let's come back and we're going to kind of do the getting the band back together montage here of our characters and so on. So we'll take 10 and be back. So this is South Warwickshire area. We're north of Meon Hill. We are maybe 10, a dozen miles away from Stratford-upon-Avon, just to kind of give you a general sense. However, I'm playing very rough with the actual geography of that area, because I do know that Quinton is a suburb of Birmingham, and so we're kind of generally in that area there.
Would it be gauche to ask, is there a specific part of the Book of the New Jerusalem that corresponds with that? Because I do not have a complete geographic knowledge of Warwickshire, so I'm unaware.
No, so I am working from some things in the Fearful Symmetries book, but unusually there's not anything direct reference in the Book of New Jerusalem to this material.
Just saying much of the text I'm going to pour over.
Exactly. No, I actually, because I did a search on that, and Quinton and a couple of other things that they had mentioned are not present. All right, I've already resumed the recording, so let's come to this. Richard, I think we cut to you, or rather the person that you go to talk to first. So who is it on our getting the band back together montage that you would go to? Is it Wilford? Is it Whitewood? Is it Grimaldi?
Well, the thing with Wilford is that he's a hard man to track down. A gentleman of no fixed abode, I believe, is the classic way of referring to it. I believe that Mr. Whitewood may be the best lead upon Wilford's whereabouts. But I'd have to go back to London, and Whitewood is, well, let's just say that still something of a bore. But Mrs. Grimaldi, however, I am aware that her paramour resides locally. And, I'd almost be tempted to say, well, I'll leave that up to Sherry. Where would you prefer it to be? I come knocking on Sebastian's door, or would you like our tea meeting to be at this very same place the next day?
You could knock on Sebastian's door, but she is staying at Crispina's house. So
at Crispina's house, yes.
Yeah.
Then I will come back to Crispina's house. I've forgotten that.
What has changed about our Crispina's house, our set dressing or our set or so on? Isabella, tell me something, and Fraser, I'll have you tell me something.
I have a very proper coffee setup in the kitchen that I have given up training the cook to do it. I just make my own coffee, but she at least tolerates, the equipment. So
She looks at it askance every time and still prepares you a cup of tea.
And I think that one thing that's changed is that the grounds are nowhere near as well kept as they were when Wilfred Brumble was the handyman of residence. It's looking rather drab these days, I would say. Grimaldi doesn't spend as much time here as Crispina does, and takes far less pride, I think, in the land, the garden, the lawns. But I am rather fond of this coffee stuff. Perhaps one day it will take off. Who knows?
So I imagine we see a scene where in that same sort of library/study where you had found the ritual signs and so on in the books and things. I think that has been straightened. A new carpet has been put in place. We don't see any of the evidence of that horror. But I think just to make an overlay reference to it, we'll see that. We'll see the two of you there. And
yes, and one thing is Isabella is far more obsessed with having lots of light. So like the window curtains are always sort of far more parted than they would be typically, because that is the one thing she very much likes to have. So it is super well lit in the library.
and so Richard, what are you telling Isabella?
I was visited by an old friend, actually, the other night, Miss Grimaldi, at our favourite tea shop. A rather late hour, but it seems the Rollright Coven have called in their favour with our.
Well, we do owe them after you snapped that stone, so.
And they did repay us. Well, they were a great boon in our battle against the dragon, Miss Weiberg's absence.
So what do they need?
It appears that two of their number have died, I'm afraid, in an automobile accident in Upper Quentin, in the Midlands, a place called Warwickshire. Ghastly place. I wouldn't wish Birmingham upon my worst enemy, but I suppose we will needs must. And well, yes, we've been entreated to get the gang back together, I believe is the saying.
What precisely are we looking into?
Well, as is always the case with these things, it's rather unclear, but it seems that the deceased's cousin, a man named St. John Hale, has had some strange occurrences at his estate, and these poor members of the coven died during their investigations.
Oh.
An automobile accident, this is what the authorities believe, but, well, I don't need to explain to you how there can be more than meets the eye in these things. I think the major thing that Miss Dearman is hoping that we would achieve is the return of their ravens, their familiar spirits, one might say.
Oh, so just some sort of binding has taken place.
Perhaps, yes. Or perhaps they've been devoured by a troll. Such things are known to happen.
All right. I will get packed. What do you need me to do?
Well, I was hoping that you might contact Mr. Whitewood on my behalf. I'm afraid the old boy has never really taken to me.
Don't think that will be any problem. I try to keep in contact with his wife every once in a while. So
yeah, a wonderful woman.
She's lovely.
She is lovely, yes. Well, I won't speak. It would be impolite to speak further of my thoughts on the matter. And I don't suppose you've seen Mr. Brumble, have you?
And she sort of stops and she says, well, I think he may have stopped by. The the maid was grumbling about someone poking about. But he didn't stay, and I missed him because I was out of town at the time.
That would explain why the rear rose bush is looking rather more tended than the rest of the garden.
We have had a terrible time finding someone for a gardener position here. Don't know what the problem is. I think it's Wilford's garden and just no other gardener can hack it. So I'll have to speak to him.
Well, I've managed to, well, in all honesty, I've managed to pass my work off to a junior with the promise of a glowing recommendation come the end of the year. So my work is seen to for the period. I hope you have no other commitments, no further travel plans.
But currently I am between things, yes.
Working on your act, I hope.
I myself have no particular act. I merely assist others with theirs.
Well, I'm rather excited to be about our business again, Miss Grimaldi. I fear we have waited for a recovery that I'm told may never happen, for Miss Weiberg to return to us with all her capacities, and I fear the dragon may have eaten such things. Perhaps it is time for us to forge Albion once more together.
Very well. I will get some tickets for London.
I will see you at the train station.
Excellent.
And I'm going to cut from there to Dr. Whitewood. In your wanderings around London a little bit here, like, what does that look like? I know what you look like here with your put upon Ian McKellen. What do we see of you in this?
I think that Arthur, we'll see a montage, I think, of him wandering, down the various paths of London parks, and then perhaps sitting on a bench by the Serpentine, feeding the ducks. And I don't know how Paul feels about this, but I think that might be an opportunity for he and Wilford to find him, perhaps.
I do think that what we see a figure sit down next to you, and you look up, and at first you think it's Wilford, and instead you'll see a very well-dressed man, hat on, coat, sits down, brushes himself off a little, and he will say,
I nod politely, sir, and then go back feeding the ducks.
Dr. Whitewood.
I'm sorry, do we know one another?
You have not as yet had the pleasure of my company.
Well, hold my hand, shake his hand, off to shake his hand. How do you do, Mr.
Brothers.
Mr. Brothers? In what capacity do you know of me?
I, like yourself, am a inquirer into the strange ways and geometries of this world.
Geometries, indeed. That does seem to me to be an increasingly interesting area of study. Until we can begin to define, almost mathematically, certainly scientifically, I cannot see how any progress can be made for mankind.
Still consider progress.
Is that why else would one continue to exist if not in search of progress, Mr. Brothers?
Oh, I believe in progress on the individual level. I perhaps less so. Some people speak of progress for humanity, speak of progress for society, but I do not believe in such a thing as society. I I believe in what we can know, what we can learn individually. And I know that you are a person who constantly wishes to learn.
Indeed, indeed. Yet recently I found my concentration wandering.
Yes. Yes.
I- So again, I'm rather unclear, sir, about how you know of me specifically, and of my interests. Are you sure we've not met?
You would know if you had met me before.
Certainly, you are a very distinctive individual.
I would say to you that you have taken but one step on a path. You have reached out to speak with one of the old ones.
Oh, and I think I pale, remembering Nodens.
He says, if you wish, I can show you how to speak with others.
Um, I, I'd get my pocket watch out. It does. The time marches on. My wife is expecting me. Perhaps if I took your card?
No, I don't think so, but I think that we will talk again, Mr. Whitewood. You will need to speak with me again.
I see. Yes. Well, and backing away, uh, Arthur is remembering his experience of Noden, and it was indeed fearful, and is not entirely certain that he wants to engage with others such as Nodens at this point. And so he politely doffs his hat and backs away. And when he thinks he's far enough away, he turns away and moves away quickly.
And I think we see you turn and immediately run into Wilford.
Oh, my dear Wilford.
Doctor,
Come. No, come with me. Come with me.
And
where are we
you
off
look
to?
back, and Brothers is gone.
I've just had a very strange encounter, Wilford.
Who? Wasn't one of those Hoxton boys?
No, there was a chap came to talk to me on the bench. On that bench. You see that bench?
And I wouldn't sort of
there,
care by you. There ain't nobody there, Doctor.
he must have left. But enough of that. Do come home with me.
Of course. I bought you some stuff from the coast.
Wonderful. And so I think if Paul is willing, I'd like to cut to approaching the Whitewood residence. You know, one of those tall walk-up white Belgravia houses. And I wonder when we come into the hall.
I think you'll hear the sound of a violin playing from the parlor. And I think the camera will kind of pan around and we'll see your wife seated there and Richard and Isabella with our returning background character. And I always forget her name here, Annabelle, playing on her Stradivarius. And the two of you will come in.
Oh, I didn't know we were expecting visitors, dear.
Your friends have arrived, she says somewhat coldly.
Um, yes. Richard, Isabella, why don't we retire to my study?
Mrs. Whitewood, I've bought you something from the coast.
Oh, and she will brighten up at that, and she says, "You shouldn't have. The last basket you brought has barely run out. You are very generous, Mr. Wilford."
Oh, anything for you and the Doctor. He always did well by me, and I owe him eternally.
Well, I will go and get tea ready, and I'll have the maid bring it into the study. You go with the others.
Excellent, will do.
Thank you, dear.
She turns.
Annabelle?
Annabelle still appreciates you very much, still remembers all that you did for her. So, and maybe is a little bit stressed at the iciness between you and your wife, and but keeps trying to do best. But she will finish what she's doing, and she will say, "I'll help her with the tea," and she'll rush off.
And if we get up to
What is different when we come into your study?
Oh, it's chaotic. It's chaos. You know, he ushers everyone in, goes to the door, closes the door, and then leans back against it. And it's a chaotic mess. There, you know, what used to be a very orderly mind is clearly not as orderly as it was.
I love what you've done with the place, Doctor.
Yes, I sometimes get too deeply engrossed in things these days. As Miss Giraldi, I apologize. I hope you're well.
I am well. And you?
Oh, couldn't be better. Couldn't be better.
Well,
Died
take that as a
down?
fix.
I beg your pardon, Miss Fraser.
Has all that dreadful business with the papers had its day, Dr. Whitewood?
Yes, the papers, yes. Shame. Anyway, enough of that. Wilford and I had an unpleasant encounter by the Serpentine.
Tell the story. Tell the story, Doctor.
A gentleman sat down next to me and introduced himself as a Mr. Brothers and expressed an interest in the art, and offered me an opportunity to revisit some old friends, perhaps, to engage with Noden's kin.
Would we all know of Nodens, I think?
Yeah.
Given our, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I will have outlined in detail my,
Yes.
you know, adventures on the White Cliffs of Dover.
That did sound particularly ghastly. Would you want to repeat that sort of thing?
Well, I asked for the man's card and then beat a hasty retreat and thankfully bumped into Wilford, and we came straight home. But I'm deeply concerned that someone would know of my interests.
Do you have the card with you?
No, he didn't give me a card. He told me his name was Brothers, Mr. Brothers. And I guess I could come up with a sketchy description of him.
Okay.
There is a picture in the
Oh, there
NPC
is.
tab.
Yeah, which tells us almost nothing.
The thing that struck you now that you think back about it is how difficult it was to see his eyes.
Yes. Yes. I found it quite a disturbing encounter. I can't put my finger on why.
Well,
Has any of you come across Mr. Brothers?
haven't
No.
had the pleasure.
No.
I have, however, had the pleasure of once more of making the acquaintance of Mrs. Dearman again, of the Rollright Coven. Do you remember?
Frightful business up north, Doctor.
Oh,
Yeah. Yes. Our first.
the witch.
Yes, the witch, I believe, would be the preferred title, I suppose. Yes, she has asked for, well, payment is due, it seems. Her aid in tracking down the dragon and the sources of power and retrieving fair Miss Weiberg. And that awful unfortunate circumstance with one of their stones. You know, one mustn't dwell, but we are as a group, I suppose, rather indebted to them. And he looks awkward at that for a second.
That he does.
Yeah. But it seems that once more, strange things are afoot in the British countryside. And as I have spoken with Miss Grimaldi, I fear that Well, I've learned so much in the past year, but it has not been put to practice. And I fear we have let the cause of Albion fester, dwindle. We have removed our goal from our sights, lady and gentlemen, and I propose that this may be an opportunity for us to once more return to our purpose, and perhaps we must accept that Miss Weiberg will never lead us in this again, but we ourselves may be the champions of our own cause. And if we can return a favor at the same time, so the better. But the ley lines fall where Miss Damon has asked us to visit, and perhaps we can revisit our purpose.
Are you entirely certain that we need to do anything but read?
Well, and he thinks back to Dr. Whitewood, was the one who I believe led the binding of the ley lines in the past. Was eager to do so, and he will look for a second and with a sort of like pitying look say, I am sure reading will be important, dear doctor. Perhaps the rest, others of us may could take action in your place.
And I think at that point, if everyone's agreeable, the door rather bangs open, and Emmeline appears with a tray of tea things, which she rather bangs on the table in the middle of the room and leaves, slamming the door behind her. Which perhaps a trip out of town might be conducive.
I think getting out of London would be good for you, yes, doctor. It still feels rather dreary, doesn't it?
Life is rather dreary, my dear Mr. Fraser.
Exchange worried glances with Wilford and Grimaldi.
London is still the hub of the empire.
Aye. I can't say I, can I? I'm supposed to be a posh southerner. There we go.
But the country air will do you good, Doctor. What say you, Miss Grimaldi?
Absolutely, and I'll drive.
Has
yes,
at any points in
forgotten
driving?
about that.
Just another one in drive. Yes, that'll put that paper talk of women drivers to rest, won't it?
And I think we're going to cut to that kind of dissolve montage to the English countryside going back. I think we can tell that you have taken the train to probably to Stratford-upon-Avon, disembarked there with a hired car arranged, Isabella driving. And again, to remind you that the roads in 1934, not great. It is only later in the period that we get strong regulation of safety and speeds and things like that. Still not great, yes. But kind of that wild ride there. And we are in, let us say, very early spring. So it is unusually bright as you are driving along through here. You will pass through what appears to be Lower Quinton, which is a town with some shops, post office. It looks rather decent, a good sized village. You can even see that there is like a local pub and an inn for people, travelers, a hotel kind of thing, staying there. And you will drive past that kind of out into the countryside, and eventually arrive at a kind of dirt track up to a country estate. And as you drive up, you will see that it's a country house, not a huge one, but a two-level house that is in very bad shape. You can see that several of the downstairs windows are missing and kind of boarded up. You will see that the front door like looks odd, like it doesn't match the house. There are some places up on the eaves where it's like some things have fallen down. But you'll also see that there are ladders here, and there are some people doing work, and that there is a little chapel off to the right-hand side of the house. But also, someone has clearly erected very recently, like there's a pig pen and a chicken coop, and you will see that there's a field nearby that has some cows in it, and there are probably looks like maybe 2 or 3 locals working, and a person kind of supervising, and is probably at this point has just finished throwing feed out to the chickens. Here's the car coming up and kind of turns and looks and sees your car, and maybe he's a little surprised. Maybe he was expecting someone else. And they'll come walking towards you. You will know that this is called Convivial House. That is the name of this place. There are a few estates and things around in this area. And you probably actually passed by Meon Hill like early in the drive, since it's an area that you know, but we're a ways away from that. And this person will walk up, and there is a picture there of St. John Hale. And he'll approach your car, and he sees a woman driving, and kind of stops. You will notice he has a pronounced limp as he walks up towards you. And he's dressed decently, but clearly in kind of work clothes a little bit. And he'll brush his hands off, and he will say, I say, are you lost?
Are you Mr. St. John Hale?
Yes, I am.
Ah, Myra of the Rollright Stones sent us up here.
I see.
She had some concern.
What kind of concerns?
And she goes, know that your cousin came up here to assist you?
He'll pause and he'll walk further towards you and away from the locals.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll kind of my the tragic accident which visited my cousin was certainly upsetting.
She has asked us to look into it, but also whatever it is that concerns you.
And she'll look as if to say, exactly who are you people? Kind of like, how do you introduce yourselves?
And I think Isabella gets out of the car and she says, I'm Isabella Grimaldi, but these are my associates. And she'll say, Dr. Arthur Whitewood.
Are you part of the Rollright Coven?
Yes. We are allies.
Allies. Make it sound like a war.
She kind of goes, oh, there's always a struggle somewhere.
And he'll look at the others. And you gentlemen are?
Um, Dr. Arthur Whitewood.
Oh, you're a doctor.
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, good, excellent. He seems
Are
somewhat
you in
relieved.
good health?
Uh yes, yes, as much as could be said. If the weather is clear, so my leg isn't acting up as much as it could. But I certainly wouldn't ask you to make a consultation that he might be upset about that. So we'll just not worry about that. But yes, but just good, a doctor. That'd be excellent. And he'll turn to Richard and Wilford.
Mr. Fraser, Richard Fraser, at your pleasure, sir.
Good to meet you, and you good, sir?
Wilfred. They call me Wilfred.
Ah,
I assist them. From the London Yeomanry. Yourself?
uh, of
Is
a
that where that
kind.
happened?
No, he says it is a funny story of a kind. When the Prince of Wales was still steeplechasing, and he had that accident. Uh, he dropped out of that, and my name came up in the roster, and I had a similar accident, though much worse. Having sort of ironic, I like to say I took the hit for the Prince of Wales, but that's been about 10 years. It's the leg's better than it once was.
I saw many in the war like that.
I am not quite old enough for that, he says, maybe a little bit sheepishly.
Richard looks off to the side as he says the same thing because he thinks the same thing. Perhaps we would be best discussing our business inside.
Yes, I'm sorry, I only have uh, 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 the cook comes in the morning and prepares several things. So I don't have that much. And I only have a servant in to kind of look to things generally. But let's go inside.
I'd like to imagine that everywhere we go where there is no servants, Wilford Henley steps in and just starts putting together a proper field ration and stuff like that.
Uh, you will come in the front hall of this place, and I think immediately you'll realize that someone has taken out the staircase to the second floor, and a very makeshift staircase has been put in place. And there are several other things like that. There's very little in the way of furnishings. What there is very kind of bare bones. And he looks a little embarrassed, but we'll direct you over to some fairly new looking chairs and a table. And he will say, I apologize. The house had been uh, uh, in the hands of a family, the Carringtons. Uh, but when the eldest Carrington died a few years ago, his nephew uh, stripped out the interiors, stripped out the values, the things that they could sell, and some of the accoutrements were sold off to auctioneers and such. So I came into the estate a little less than a year ago and have been trying to make it into a working farm, perhaps, but also find a place that is decent to live and rebuild. I'm not much of an interior designer, but I try my best. But perhaps I go on too much. So yes. Hello.
Hello.
Uh,
I know.
Miss Gibbon gave us little detail of beyond that your cousin. I'm dreadfully sorry for your loss. But that she and her fellow traveler,
Yes, that's
Mrs.
a good way to put it.
Well, they were here to help you with, well, Miss Damon merely said strange occurrences, and I wish to reassure you, sir, that we are familiar with the strangest of occurrences.
Let us have you make that reassurance spend.
Okay. I'll spend 1 point of reassurance. You can speak frankly to us. Nothing you say could possibly be used to judge you, for we have the openest of minds.
I pause and say, my cousin, I knew that she had some experience with spooky things, shall we say? I do not wish to perhaps do not wish to cloud your judgment on these things. She was was a very stable woman for all of her indulgences. There had been some things that had occurred here on the estate, and I had gone down to Lower Quinton to call her, and she and her friend drove up on a Monday, and she stayed here until the Wednesday, and then left. And I heard later that she had been killed on the road. Perhaps I should tell you, and again, if I feel badly that perhaps my having called her out here, that put her in such a way that this accident could happen. We have had some incidents, or rather, I believe they are incidents. There are others that are perhaps more skeptical, and he'll kind of look at you, Doctor. Uh, uh, I'm sorry. This is very difficult for me. I had, over the last few months, seen some things at night. A white-faced figure a couple of times in the darkness moving around. I thought perhaps a burglar or a tramp. And he'll pause there and say, but it did not seem that way. It is very like a white-faced child. Or I cannot even begin to kind of explain it, but we had seen this ragged figure, or rather I had. And then there were some things that were moved around outside in the estate grounds. And we had a cow and a pig go missing. And he'll walk over to the side cupboard and he'll open it up, and he will come back with these little clay, sort of like cow, sort of like pig effigies. And he sets those two down in front of you all and has a box that he doesn't open up, that he kind of sets beside it. He says, the cow and the pig went missing, and these things, these clay pieces, were left in their place.
Could I make, I mean, I'll give you a choice, anthropology, archaeology, or occult spend?
Let's do anthropology here.
Doesn't get used often.
Yeah. I think that as you kind of look at these have a primitive look to them, but they definitely look more like the work of a young person, like a school boy
A
or
child's
schoolgirls.
effort to
Yeah,
represent these
right,
animals.
right. Rather than anything ceremonial or ritual.
They look like they've been made by a child.
That is what there were others that agreed with you on this. There was, though, this, and he'll open the box and he pulls out another one of these clay figures, but this one is clearly a person. And you see that it's like someone has clearly taken a piece of wood to like stencil a flannel kind of thing on the shirt. And it's maybe a little bit better done. The hair is clearly meant to be curly. And he will say, we had a young man from Upper Quinton who was working here. And when he came in one morning, he found this and in his work box, and it terrified him, spooked him out, as it does sort of look like him, bears a resemblance, and he has not returned. So I fear that there is perhaps someone playing around with us on this.
Let me be clear, young man. When you say he has not returned, do you mean he has disappeared with the pig?
Oh,
and
no, 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 no. The pig and the cow, I've not. I assume they were stolen, but he just decided he no longer wished to work for us. After this, the look of it scared him off. There's some superstitious folk in Upper Quinton, lower as well, rather lower Quinton and upper as well. But the thing was when we found the body. Uh,
A body?
Dun, dun, dun.
I like to imagine that Whitewood's demeanor has changed slightly. He's got back to the game as a foot, sort of, bit more.
Out from under the London cosh.
uh, this was a week before I called my cousin out in the back field. As I was walking out there, I found a mummified corpse, as what we would call it, desiccated, dried out. I am no expert on these things. Uh, it. I immediately called the constable, and the constable came, and we could tell it was very old. We called someone from the Historical Society, and they came out and picked it up. They placed it at, say, 15th, 16th century, based on the dress and the jewelry on it. They think that someone was perhaps found a mound or a grave site, and dug it up. Though why they would dump it on our property and also not take the jewelry is uncertain. But it rather put me out. But the chat from the Historical Society took it away, and the constable said there was nothing for us to do. I know that he asked around. We haven't heard anything about grave diggers or robbers or such in the area, but there it is.
Who took it and where did they take it?
Mr. Johansson from the Historical Society down at Stratford.
Where exactly upon your estate was the body found?
Oh, I can certainly walk you out to there if you'd like.
Yes. Does anyone else have any other questions for Mr. St. John before we proceed?
Was it an adult body? Child's body?
A woman. They guessed 20s or 30s.
Enough of this, Miss Grimaldi. Let us hie to Stratford.
I mean, yes, but let's get a little bit more, what is it? The circumstances surrounding the situation, please. Would that
Do
be
you really
okay?
think that's necessary?
I do.
Very well. Let's have a look at the place then.
Wilfred, you were going to say something.
I'll lean to Richard and I'll say the doctor just needed to get out of London. He's back to his old form, Richard.
So, I fear the terror is back, Wilfred.
Well, we'll see for how long. We'll see for how long. But yes, there might be something else we could find, Doctor, around here. Some other evidence, maybe outside.
Well, come along, come along.
And he will St. John will stand up and will walk you out. The people who are working on the farm, clearly there's some builders, some people working farm. St. John actually walks you kind of out the front door. He'll say the back door is in very bad shape, so we'll have to walk around. He'll kind of walk you around. He'll point to the chapel. He's like, we're using that as a cheese storehouse. We're doing some of our own cheeses. So very excited about that. That's that hoping that will be a thing. I understand that's fallen out of late, but we buy. We have our own, but we also supplement it with the milk from the local farmers and so on.
He's in a chapel.
Pardon?
Cheese in a chapel.
Yes. We made sure that it had been what is the word?
Deconsecrated?
Deconsecrated, so that the cheese wouldn't be heretical or whatnot.
Wow.
I don't
Perhaps
know. I'm not
better-
really very good Anglican, so
Perhaps better for the storage of cheese.
The pun about holy cheese that must be left untouched. You must be familiar with that cheese at this point in history. Just as a player note, let's recircle back to the chapel and perhaps when it was deconsecrated. That could be a lead. But yeah.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. He will mention that certainly when his cousin came here, she walked the grounds, she looked around the house and so on, and spent that Tuesday looking at things, walking further and further out. She was particularly concerned with the fencing. But he'll walk you back to a point in the backfield, and these may have been at one point gardens, or these may have even been farmer fields. Very hard to tell because it's clear that even before the house was sold, that whoever owned this had not taken very good care of here. So there are a couple of cows standing out here, and you will find a spot that's clearly been tromped all over by the constabulary and all the people that came to look at it and all that stuff of where the body
please.
had been. And it's also rained since then, all of that kind of thing.
And there's
Yeah.
nothing to be seen here.
Well, Let me walk about. I'm sure I can find something if I walk the perimeter. You go and look at the chapel.
There's
You know a
nothing to
bit
be.
about God's work, Doctor?
Yes, don't I just?
To
So
the
Wilford,
chapel with you.
Wilford, let's start with you. What do you want to do here?
I would like to walk the broader perimeter. Now, if they lost a cow and a pig, uh, actually, first thing, the timeline of the finding of the mummified corpse.
So that was a couple of weeks ago. The pig and the cow had vanished several weeks before that, with a gap between them. So this has been going on for upwards of 3 months.
Okay.
He'll say since the new year.
Since the new year. Now, luckily there is no animal husbandry skill. Nobody ever takes that. But with us spending outdoors, looking for the fence work, the balustrade round the estate, is there any evidence of egress of a large bovine?
So you walk it. The fencing actually is surprisingly good. Like it's done with stone and wood in some places, and old.
So it should
Uh,
prevent the egress of a
yeah,
cow.
definitely. You will find a spot where there's a break in the fence, uh, and you will note that there you see these along the line. It's stacked stone for the standard walls, but there have been some larger stones, perhaps 3 feet high, that have kind of been as like marking posts along the way. Uh, and at this break, you will see there is one of these stones, the marking post, and it is actually split. And you're looking at it, and it looks weirdly like one of those Rollright stones, like in that kind of style, but much smaller, like kind of echoing that. But this one is broken, and it looks like it happened within the last year or two.
Okay. So we've got a little bit of sort of like moss growing on it. Yeah, so it's not super fresh, but
Yeah.
clearly it's been
Yeah. Now,
Uh,
an animal could walk over the break that's there, but it would be difficult. Like you'd have to lift up a pig to carry it over this, for example.
okay.
And that time scale means that it is before Miss Hale came here.
Yes.
Um, okay, so she will have seen this, and that might explain why she was concerned by what she'd seen. Would that make sense?
Yeah.
Wilford?
That seems
Got it.
fair.
You've got it right. It's broken stone, cows, pigs missing. No, broken stone, body, cows, pigs missing, effigy. Is that right?
No, broken stone.
Yeah.
You guess around the time that you mucked with the Rollright stones.
Ah,
Who? I don't know what you're talking about.
Then at some point after that, he takes possession of the house. Then we have the pigs, cows go missing. The weird thing that spooks off the young man, this visions of this white-faced figure, and then lastly, that sort of the 2 weeks ago, the body. And a week ago, his cousin came up here.
yeah, okay. So just so I'm clear, when you say this resembles one of the Rollright stones, does it resemble the Rollright stones that Mr. Fraser rather rashly destroyed?
Well, I'm going to leave that question to Wilford because you are dealing with
Fair
other
enough.
matters. Wilford,
Yes,
what
I
is your question?
I need to consult some higher authority on this. This is
Okay.
clearly way outside my my domain, and I will rush back towards the direction of the cheesy chapel.
Okay. Should we do Richard next? Like, what do you? And then we'll go to Isabel, and then we'll kind of bring Arthur and let you choose which direction you want to go.
I was just wondering about, our more esoteric abilities. We are able to attune to magic and to sense such things, and is there perhaps anything that can be gleaned from this this stone of former stone of power? See.
So Wilford gets you and brings you over to
I mean,
there.
I'm imagining here, it looks like one of those stones that you broke, Master Fraser, and me being like, oh yeah, I mean, this never went wrong before, right? Like, and reaching out to touch it.
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember. I think we had uh allowed you to kind of spend a point of magic, like temporarily, to have this vision for a time.
Yeah.
And you have been journeying more into the ethers. So your vision has developed, has changed. So what is the vision like? What do we see kind of as our effect on screen when we see through your eyes as you look out into the world, Richard?
I think it's he puts the hand on the stone and he closes his eyes, right? And you can hear all the sounds of the workers and everything around, and Wilford probably like mumbling on about like, you need a strong pair of hands to lift a pig over that thing, if you would, Master Fraser, and they're all just fading out to like I think maybe like a high pitched, like sort of staticky whine. And then as his eyes open up, it's like it's just the horizon. All the man's affairs and everything around is disappeared, and there's just the land and stars above showing the ley lines and whatever significance there might be about this stone.
Definitely the ley line passes through this plot, through this area, not in the sense of like a juncture, like where we get a sink, but the passage through of the ley line. I think you'll see that as it goes on further north. You look back, and I think that you can imagine you see Meon Hill off in the distance, like that kind of telescopes and goes back. But I think the other thing you'll see is that this fencing here, as it stands, is particularly on the south side of the estate. Like, it doesn't go completely around, and it's definitely a barrier. And the stones here are shaped to echo the Rollright, to draw on some of that strength. And this is the stone that you broke. This is its mirror here that someone made. And it looks to you like you can still see the lightning flash that struck it.
When the dragon broke the stones.
When the dragon broke the stone, yes.
Completely unprompted by my own crying, but
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this, I think the thing we get from that is that there was a barrier here. It was placed by somebody once upon a time. It is now fractured, and that may be the source. That may be tied to whatever's been happening here since, I guess.
Yeah. And it definitely this is built to cover the southern side of the estate,
which is towards Meon Hill.
It's towards Meon Hill. It's also towards lower
Quentin.
Lower Quentin.
Yeah. And if I just as a refresh to confirm, Meon Hill is where, if we were to claim the ley line.
I'm sorry, I have to go back. It's on the north side. It's Upper Quentin.
North side, Upper Quentin.
I apologize.
So this is the fencing on the north side of the estate.
Yes.
Yeah. And Meon Hill's on the north, and
Meon Hill is to the south, actually.
So okay, cool.
Sorry.
No worries. Interesting. So the north side of the estate towards Upper Quentin. And just to confirm though, like if we wanted to do the thing that we use to gain more magic points by claiming ley line nexuses, right? Like Meon Hill would be where we would be going to.
Yeah.
Yes, though it is dedicated to the ferry. It is one of those places where the door appears from time to time. And you know that laying claim to that would also be staking a claim against perhaps the ferry. It's a dangerous game there.
I'm sure we could come to some. They seemed reasonable folk last time we spoke. But yes, I will. Obviously convey all that to Wilford. And yeah, thank you. I think that was a good use of a spend.
Isabella, what are you doing? What are you looking into here as this is going on? And then we'll come to Arthur.
Well, I sort of am, I think I'm speaking to St. John, and it's very much a sort of, well, the clay suggests that there's some presence here. And she sort of looks around and says, I don't see a lot of clay soil right here. Is there a source of the clay around here? Is there a stream or?
Says, no, that's somewhat unusual. It is a ways. It's why I thought it might be a school thing. But the clay is too rough. That's what the historian said when I showed him it. It is definitely drawn from a natural spot, but there's not really anything close by that would be that. It's the nearest one is miles away.
And I think she follows like the line of like where Wilford and Richard are, and she'll say to the north or to the east, west. Is to the north the clay?
He says, no, actually, we'd have to go several miles to the west, to where the stream is.
There's a stream. Does it have a name?
Uh, we'll call it I'm not gonna say cold stream. Beckett's.
Beckett's. Because I only ask because I may have to ask directions.
That is quite a hike to there.
Still, it may be necessary depending on what we find.
I see.
Did your cousin mention anything else?
She walked the grounds the night that she came and looked at the stone, the fence as your assistant and as Mr. Fraser are doing. And I showed her where the body had fallen, and I showed her the pens and so on. She walked that evening, and she walked a little bit after dark and kind of kept a watch out that night. The next day, she walked further out. But of course, I had things to do. She did seem bothered when she came back. Uh, 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 Upset, but clearly didn't want to make me upset. She seemed to, she was talking quite a bit with her associate, her friend, and I know they stayed up that night, and then they left first thing in the morning.
Did they mention coming back?
She said she had to consult with someone.
Mhm.
But again, I had the sense that she seemed to think it was above my above my grade. She's always been a little smarter than me. And that is the thing.
And
Makes
she sort
me
of st-
makes me wish I had sold out, maybe. I don't know if this continues on.
she goes, well, we probably will go through some of the same steps that your cousin has. We will.
He actually finally now puts his hand up and he goes, "Do you not think my cousin's death was an accident?"
Do not.
And like he goes pale.
And she sort of stops and she says, there are strange things in the world. So we will be going through the same steps. There are 4 of us into different way of seeing.
What do you want to spend to keep him from kind of really feeling the weight of this? Is it reassurance or something else?
Not reassurance. I'm thinking that sounds like something that just wouldn't. No, I think what she has is American. I think
We will figure this out. Damn right.
she's like, so we have a plan and I'm going to tell you how it is. And she's going to put him on a little schedule of like what he needs to do. And she's going to walk through the house and go, now, where is it that you sleep? And
Okay.
these sorts of things. And yeah, and she just keeps him very busy for a little while. She'll have maybe Dr. Whitewood talk to
Okay.
them. if
Let's
he
have
seems
let's
like
have you
he's going to-
spend that point of American. Dr.
I will.
Whitewood, what are you doing during this?
I think I have a cursory look at the church, at the chapel.
It looks like it was a small family chapel, quite nicely made. It looks very basic, like it wasn't particularly elaborate beforehand, and it looks like it is someone. There's probably a notation date of the deconsecration, probably carved into the stone, and you can see that that was done in 1911.
I'm tempted to spend a point of theology just to get some sense of whether there's anything untoward here, or evidence collection if you think that would be more appropriate.
Let me think here.
I mean, there may not be. I'm content for there not to be.
I think you will find, as you kind of look through here, and I'll let you decide on where you want to spend it from, that there is kind of carved in very kind of basically in the back part of the church, what might have been covered by a drape or a cloth or something like that. You can see there's a hanger would have been above. Someone has carved a very simple folkloric ward against evil. Has marked that there.
And can I get a sense of, and again, if you would like me to mark, I don't know, archaeology, a sense of how old that carving is?
Yeah, let's have you spend archaeology. You would say it's old, like when this little chapel, maybe a couple hundred years ago, was built. Someone carved that in there to mark it out, to mark that basically to say there's something in the region that's unpleasant. This is a general kind of warding because the Christian God can't deal with everything.
Okay. Okay. That will do
But
me.
it's significantly done enough that you can tell that who did it was not a fool.
No, no, this is not just, scratchings in the wall. This
Right.
is a deliberate act of protection. And then I think I'll leave the church. And do I see Wilford, Richard, or Isabella first?
Yeah, you will see that the three of them. I think Richard and Wilford are over by the stones. See, Isabella is giving instructions to St. John. So either one of them.
I think Isabella, of course, ignoring the conversation she's having with St. John, and simply say, I think we need to look at where the accident happened, Miss Grimaldi. I think that there is dark evil afoot.
Uh,
And I look at St. John as if to say, well, isn't that why you got your sister to come, your cousin to come?
He says, "Well, so that certainly be good. I do fear about the fading light, Dr. Whitewood. Though, though, and then you see him think again. He goes, but they'll maybe know that would probably be a good idea if you were to go and look at that."
I have a thing called assess honesty.
Yeah.
Is he trying? I'm happy to spend a point of that to determine if he's trying to get rid of us because he thinks I am odd, or because he is suspicious.
He's trying to get rid of you because he's just realized something. And I think that like he's like embarrassed.
I look at Isabella as if to say, what have you said to him?
And she's like and she kind of turns to St. John and she goes, is there anything that you could tell us?
Well, and you will hear in the distance the sound of a car coming up the drive. And you see him go, I have to go. And he will take off at a good clip from where you are, even with his limp, like back around the house to the front.
All right, well, our car's out there as well, so I will.
A moment, Miss Grimaldi. Wilford, come quickly.
Doctor?
Go around the other side of the house and keep an eye on that chap. Who's he meeting?
Oh, all right.
Because you're our stealthy gent, aren't you?
I have stealth and I have shadowing.
Because I'd like to know.
Let's
so
find out.
worried, Miss Grimaldi.
Let's find out who he's going to meet.
All right. Wilford, I think this is not a particularly difficult test. It is difficulty 3 to keep out of sight. Difficulty 4 to not have any of the people who are working here see you kind of skulking around.
Okay, so for the people viewing and people that have forgotten the rule system, can you explain?
Absolutely. So right now you have 10 points in stealth.
Yes.
You can put however much you wish into a die roll of a D6. You're trying to get either a 3, or if you want the better success, a 4, and you add whatever you spend to that roll. Keeping in mind that those refresh at the end of a particular mystery.
I'm going to put 2 points into the roll, so that adds 2 to my dice roll, yeah?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and I've got to beat 4.
You want to hit a 3 or you want to hit a 4?
Excellent. I will throw that 1d6. Rolled a 3, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Add my 2.
Yep, so that's a 5. Keep in mind that if you beat a roll by I think 3 or more, then you get a potential benefit. You will come around the house and you will see this car pull up, and you will see this gentleman get kind of park, clearly annoyed that you all have parked kind of in the way. He actually kind of drives his car around and parks it in a what is clearly a spot, gets out, and you will see St. John come up to him, and there's a lot of talk, and he's gesticulating at the other car, and St. John seems to be doing some kind of explanation, trying to do this, and clearly kind of maybe this person is very prickly. He's taller than St. John, maybe a little bit older, maybe by just a few years. And there seems to be some back and forth going on that. Like he's trying to explain that they have visitors, and this person maybe does not seem entirely pleased by that prospect.
Does St. John seem quite subservient to this person? That might not be the right word, but does he?
What do you want to spend? What's your now for this? For investigative skills, you'll choose an interpersonal skill that you think is appropriate for this.
I haven't got assess honesty, although I'm not trying to find out. None of them sort of fit it directly, do they? Would Streetwise tell me?
I don't think Streetwise would, but I would say flattery or even intimidation kind of would give you a sense of what's happening here.
Yeah, I mean, I want to know if he was sort of cowing at this guy. So I think let's spend the flattery point.
Yeah. You will see this back and forth, and I think you can tell that this gentleman is maybe a little bit bothered kind of by this happening, but maybe St. John has suggested that these are friends of his cousin. He seems to reacted maybe a little bit badly to that, or is like that kind of skepticism that you get. You brought some of your cousin's weird friends here. But the other thing is that the closeness that they're standing, the way that St. John is kind of putting his hand on his arm, you're fairly certain that these two gentlemen are very, very close chums.
Very well. I shall dart back then to Richard, Isabella, and Arthur, and I will give them the number plate of the vehicle. Hopefully I observed that. A brief description of the gentleman. Does he look like anybody in the NPC tab?
We have Basil Elliott in the NPC tab now.
Elliott. And I will give a brief sort of description of what I saw and what was at play between the two of them. Clearly, I was at a distance, so I didn't really overhear anything. But that's what I thought, that he knows this guy, and he's tried to sort of palm us off as friends of his cousins.
Richard, let's come to you because we haven't heard from you in a bit. So,
just as I think in the absence, I explained everything that I'd sensed from the Rollright stones, and reiterated that the dragon broke that stone. I did successfully bullshit my way into saying that it was not.
Absolutely, Myra believed you.
Yeah. Everybody else may.
Myra believed you.
Yes. Well, I presume you all presume the worst of Richard, anyways. But in any case, having conveyed all of that, I think, and then with Wilford reappearing, I'll say, perhaps the best part of valor. We need not be welcome, and as may not be welcome here by everyone. And I don't see what it would serve our purpose to further embarrass St. John by our presence. We have leads to pursue, and as he stares up at the darkening sky, perhaps we should find lodgings. I was going to ask Mr. Hale if we could find a place here, but look skeptically at the renovated house. Unless there's room for a bed in the chapel. among the cheeses, I think perhaps the inn would be a better place to look.
Agreed.
And I think as you are having that conversation, you will see Sinjin and his friend come around the house. And you can see that his friend, Mr. Elliot, has put on his best face. And he will kind of stride forward, and he says, I understand that you are friends of Sinjin's cousin. I'm very sorry for your loss there. I'm Basil Elliot. I'm working with Sinjin in repairing the estate. But I only come up on weekends.
As part of them.
Yes. I have my practice in Stratford during the week.
So medical or legal?
Medical.
Ah. And they'll look over at Dr. Whitewood to see if Dr. Whitewood wants to capitalize on that association at all.
Yes, I think I'm torn here. One, he may have developed a certain view of me from scurrilous articles in red top newspapers.
Undoubtedly, your name has been bantered around.
I think I will keep myself to myself. I do not intend to open myself to professional ridicule here.
I'm so tempted to just be like, oh, Dr. Whitewood's here, but I will.
Yeah, but I do think that Wilford, Isabella, Richard, you will note Whitewood, who is usually the first to put his professional credentials forward,
Yes.
does not.
I will pause for a moment, look over at Whitewood when he doesn't say anything, and I will say, well, Doctor, a fine profession indeed. Turning your hand to farming, most impressive. I hope you had the pleasure of meeting our dear departed friend. Fine lady. Fine lady.
Yes. And Elliot will say, well, it is getting dark. Why don't all of you come into the house? I have to apologize for the state of it. St. John and I have been working very hard. We can at least feed you. So I will suggest that you may want to drive into Quinton to find lodgings there. Though, if you give us a day or two, if you're staying longer, we can put something together.
That will be necessary. Accommodations in the village will be fine.
Yes, I would hate to add to your work of many more putting together. It seems as though that's rather a serious undertaking at the moment.
I will say that, and he pauses. He said, "I think perhaps in some regards it might be perceived that we have overestimated our skills at certain things here. So we are attempting to make do. The locals have been very good to us in guiding us on what we wish to do, but I think we are still figuring out our way."
And I hear the cheeses are, well, God's gift.
He says they are edible. He says very positive, and so there seems to be a little bit of tension between him and St. John over that. But he will come and he will direct you to the house. He will reheat some of the things that have been left by the cook. It's very basic, and then he will direct you, like if you're going to go back in the evening, this is how you get to the village, you get to the inn and get set up. And
Will I spend a point of flattery to get on Basil Elliott's good side?
absolutely.
Yeah, and I'd like to be.
Oh, the English Thorn.
Yes, you've read it.
Oh, it's a marvelous book.
Oh,
Marvelous book.
An English Rose. I think you're confusing.
Oh,
with
English Rose. English Rose.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. I haven't had a chance to read the follow-up, but I adored the first.
And with the pained look, Richard will say, "Well, you rather should. I believe that you'll equal to its its first. The words ringing hollow in his mouth. But
I'll make sure when I go to Stratford to check in at the booksellers.
well, if our paths coincide further, I'd be happy to sign it for you, my good friend.
Excellent, excellent. He seems very pleased to have an author.
Yes. Well, and I must admire the work that you're doing here. Turning a ruin into something greater. It's a shame about. I know that this must seem rather far-fetched to some, but it's rather a series of odd occurrences you've had here, and I'm of the view that if nothing else, man's belief in such things makes them true. Look at your workmen, for example.
Yes, I would agree with you on that. I think that St. John and the locals, he has spent more time here during the week, and perhaps a little bit of the perception of the strangeness has come upon him. He certainly believes that there is something odd going on here. And he says, but there are various things. I mean, he kind of pauses the feeling of the upper versus lower Quintons are something to be said on that.
Oh, something of a rivalry.
Yes, let us say that the people from Upper Quinton keep to themselves.
And if I'm correct, this is the estate lies betwixt the two. Yes, on the borders, as it were.
Yes.
Liminal space between upper and lower, and the northern side of the property, I believe, is towards Upper Quinton.
Yes, though the Bradbury estate lies between us and that.
Bradbury, they would be your neighbors, the Upper Quinton neighbors.
They apparently are our neighbors, though I have not seen any of them.
Has St. John?
I don't believe so. As I understand it, they are very private.
I'm just wondering whether I could spend anything to overhear all of that.
I don't think there's a necessary spend. I think you can overhear that.
Well, I believe this is probably the conversation of a dinner, right? Like
Yeah.
over the region,
Then I think I'll lean over to Wilford and say, I think we should make an early exit, and you can talk to some locals in the pub.
Oh, I could do with a point, that's for sure. That's for sure.
Yes.
Good idea. Might be my gout playing up, actually, Richard.
Yes, and I'm terribly tired.
An early night, possibly.
Yes. Could you possibly help me get back to the inn, Wilford? I'm feeling rather tired.
Of course. I mean, we could get some alternate transport if you wish, Richard.
No.
Elliot will say, in the most sort of polite way, will say, if you need to use my car, you're more than welcome to. I saw you have one, but if you need to go,
well, I think Wilford can drive, can't he?
Yeah, I can definitely drive. In the war, they taught me how to drive. If you wish to stay, Richard.
I didn't want to stamp on anything else you want to do in the house. I just think there's a parallel to be done here. If I just
I would propose that, having spent my point of flattery, that I might stay on tonight.
Yeah, they will get you set up.
Perhaps maybe witness this pale figure that's seen. Maybe I won't, but and we can, me and Basil Elliott can talk into the night.
I have the room that we set up for my cousin. It is still in decent shape if you wish to use that.
I will catch up with you. Don't forget the brandy finish your brandies before you drive, of course.
And he'll turn to you,
I'd
Isabella.
Like
Let me hang on one second.
Yes.
Isabella, the St. John will turn to you, and you're certainly welcome to stay, or I can drive you into town.
I'll go with these two. They're headed towards the inn. That will do for me. Thank you so much.
And you were saying, Dr. Whitewood?
No, I was going to try and catch Isabella's eye to find out what her preference was.
I will note that I am the only one with oral history when it comes to local traditions, folklore, family legend, or gossip.
Streetwise.
You can certainly find out who's a pig rustler around here.
This feels, with this split and division, this feels like a good place for us to stop. Then we can start up next time. Does that seem fair? I would like to do a quick stars and wishes though before we go. Stars being things that you dug, you appreciate, character play, that kind of thing, and then wishes being sort of generally what do you want to see for your character, kind of looking forward in the short term or the long term. We'll stick with the character keeper order for the moment. Richard.
Yeah, I mean, I love just dropping back into these characters. I think we really picked it up back with the thing. I enjoyed the year gap. And I really, really enjoy Whitewood's deterioration and then back to his brusque self as soon as he's got the bit in his mouth. I would like as a wider thing, as I said, to learn more magic. And I've been looking at the Aethers just before we started playing, and I've come up with a few ideas of how I might be able to use those planes based upon what the book suggested, like the Dreamlands could be a way to access people's dreams. Bag Sins Are Made Real seems like a good way of, trying to play into that symbolism and stuff.
Yeah.
But that's just a general wish is that, I'd like to try and take advantage of those ethers in our investigations. I don't think it leaps out here particularly, but, for example, Tex, the first one is the ethereal plane. Could do some sort of remote viewing through that, I think, and also strong emotions provide a compass for the real world.
I think it's a good way for us to do improvise magic with a nice fictional positioning for that. So let's see what we can do about that. And we should also not forget everyone's Zoas.
Yes, yeah. And I'd like to just propose, because it seems like the most place within our, formalities to say it. I'd love some company on these explorations into the Aether if anyone would wish to delve deeper into those magic circles again.
Like it.
I think Isabella's rather queered the pitch with respect to the magic circle, but
Dr. Whitewood.
no, this is great. No, it's good to be back. This was my game of the year last year, so it's lovely to be back. I'm enjoying Arthur's decline and slightly kind of erratic behavior, it's just good to have these characters back together. And this seems like a good mystery to get our teeth into.
Excellent.
In terms of wishes, I do want to run my field microscope over the crash site, because my Zoa gives me a bonus when I'm doing knowledge-y things if I look at it through my field microscope.
Absolutely. Excellent. We'll definitely get that scene next time, probably in the early light of the day kind of thing. Sounds. Wilford.
Really great to get back into these characters. Nobody's stepping on anybody else. I really liked the decline of Arthur, and also Richard's sort of inability to get his book out. And I really dug Isabella's trip to Mussolini land. Really good to pull that in. Clearly that may have something going forwards. Looking forwards, nothing in the short term really enjoying it. I like how you brought sort of ability for people to do some spends today in some different areas. That was really good. Long term, you know, a bit more East Anglia. I always like East Anglia, good part of the country. Apart from that, same as usual.
Okay.
Lol, really good.
Yeah, I remember seeing East Anglia in the Wishes several times, I believe, from last time. And Isabella.
Wow, this 3 hours flew by. When you said, and we'll wrap it up, I literally was like, what? So, I thought we were at the 2 hour mark at most. No sense of time, just a joy and a pleasure to watch all of you go. It is so satisfying and so lovely to be back. And let's see, wishes. I do think I might actually consider the whole trip with Richard on the Aeons or whatever, because things are desperate enough, and I think she's starting to feel closed in and maybe looking for a way to make a difference, if that makes any sense. Because saving her pennies isn't going to help any people. So
That seemed perfectly fair. Excellent. I just want to say how much fun I had today. I love these characters so much. I appreciate how all of you played in with my kind of hard framing where we were setting up and getting us to a mystery. I definitely wanted to set something up that put some threads out there, and then I know that we have some things left over from last time that are threads to pull on. So starting us here, and then I hope to from here give a couple of choices of direction, so that you have your own a trail that you wish to follow. With that in mind, I am going to stop the recording.